our behavior is mainly developed, based, or instead by our free will or determinism. Whatever the step we take, we should have the willpower. Unless we have free will, mean strong decision, strong determination, we cannot do anything, we cannot achieve anything at any time, at any cost. Therefore, we have to have the strong vision of our free will to develop or to update ourselves. Our behavior should be updated, our activity should be updated, our vision should be updated according to the situation, according to the time and period. Similarly, even determinism also one of the most important one to act accordingly. Both free will versus determinism are similar in meaning, but it is very peculiar and different in its activities. One can assess anything, but one cannot determine firmly. Our behavior denotes our movements, our actions, how far it leads to the public, people, to understand what you are, what we are, what others are. Therefore, we have to concentrate more on these regards. There are various determinisms are there. Hard determinism, soft determinism, etc. Even the determinism should be exploded virtually. It may be external or internal. Whatever the way may be, the determinism takes an exalted place in one's life. Even free will and determinism also followed each other, because free will is a kind of moral, ethic, and social concept. What happens? That is meant central to philosophy and most religions. Therefore, we have to understand the theme of, the essence of free will in detailed described manner. Even determinism is a philosophical view. It is not a philosophy. It is a philosophical view that it can give us certain conditions, everything that can be ensued. In this regard, we have to have the deep analysis of this free will and determinism, which can be exploited our inner and external views. We can get the question, is free will or determinism correct or not? There may be some more questions. What is the need of free will? What is the essence of, what is the standard of determinism, which can give us the value to uplift our lifestyle? These types of things should be known through analytical way. We have to analyze. Analyze means go in deep discussion, deep altercation. Then only we can come to understanding, not a conclusion. Basing on that, today I took the topic of free will versus determinism. Let us start with prayer. पूज्याय राघवेन्द्राय सत्यधर्मरताय च भजतां कल्पवृक्षाय नमतां कामधेनवे. The free will versus determinism debate revolves around the extent to which our behavior is a result of forces over which we have no control, or whether the people are able to decide for themselves whether to act or behave in a certain way. Determinism is a determinist approach, proposes that all behavior has a cause and is this predictable. Free will is an illusion, and our behavior is governed by internal or external forces over which we have no control. What is external determinism? External determinism sees the cause of behavior as being outside the individuals, such parental influence, the media, or school. These are all external facts. Approaches which adopt this position include behaviorism and social learning, etc. theories. For example, Bandura showed that children become aggressive through observation and imitation of their violent parents. Now we can think about internal determinism. The other main supporter of determinism are those who adopt a biological perspective. However, for them, it is internal, not external. Forces that are the determining the factor. According to sociobiology, evolution governs the behavior of a species and genetic inheritance, that of each individual within it. For example, Bowlby states, child has an innate need to attach to one main attachment figure. Personality traits like extraversion and neuroticism and behavior associated with them are triggered by neurological and hormonal process within the body. There is no need for the concept of an autonomous human being. Ultimately, this view sees us no more than biological machines, and even consciousness itself is interpreted as a level of arousal in the nervous system. Freud also viewed behavior being controlled from inside the individual in the form of unconscious motivation or childhood events known as psychic determinisms. There are different levels of determinism. Let us see. Hard determinism. It sees free will as an illusion and believes that every event and action has a cause. Behaviorists are strong believers in hard determinism. Their most forthright and articulate spokesman has been B.F. Skinner. Concepts like free will and motivation are dismissed as illusions that disguise the real causes of human behavior. In Skinner's scheme of things, the person who commits a crime has no real choice. She or he is propelled in this direction by environmental circumstances and a personal history which makes breaking the law natural or inevitable. For the law abiding, an accumulation of reinforces has opposite effect. Having been rewarded for following rules in the past, the individual does so in the future. There is no more evolution or even mental calculation involved. All behavior is under stimulus control. Now, let us discuss about the soft determinism. It represents a middle ground. People do have a choice, but that choice is constrained by external or internal factors. For example, being a poor does not make you steal, but it may make you more likely to take that route through desperation, not inspiration. Soft determinism suggests that some behaviors are more constrained than others and that there is an element of free will in all behavior. However, a problem with determinism is that it is inconsistent with society's ideas of responsibility and self control that form the basis of our moral and legal obligations. An additional limitation concerns the facts that psychologists cannot predict a person's behavior with 100% accuracy due to the complex interaction of variables which can influence behavior. Is it? Free will. Free will is the idea that we are able to have some choice in how we act and assumes that we are free to choose our behavior. In other words, we are self-determined. For example, people can make a free choice to whether to commit a crime or not. This does not mean that behavior is ransom, but we are free from the causal influences of past events. According to free will, a person is responsible for their own actions. One of the main assumptions of the humanistic term for the exercise of free will. Personal agency refers to the choices we make in life, the paths we go to down and their consequences. For humanistic psychologists such as Maslow in the year 1943 and Rogers in the year 1951, freedom is not only possible but also necessary if we are to become fully functional human being. Both see self-actualization is understand whether each party to the relationship chooses to do. Ranged against deterministic psychologies are those who believe that what is inevitable are therefore those who believe that human beings have the ability to control their own destinies. However, there is also an intermediate position that goes back to the psychoanalytic psychology of Sigmund Freud. At first sight, Freud seems to be a supporter of determinism in that he argued that our actions and our thoughts are controlled by unconscious. However, the very goal of a therapy was to help the patient overcome from that force. Indeed, without the belief that people can change, therapy itself makes no sense. This is insight has been taken up by several neo-Freudians. One of the most influential has been Enrich from, or his name was Erich. In Fear of Freedom, he argues that all of us have the potential to control our lives or our lives, but that many of us are too afraid to do so. As a result, what happens? We give up our freedom and allow our lives to be governed by circumstances, other people, political ideology, or irrational feelings. However, determinism is not inevitable, and in the very choice we all have to do good or evil from see the essence of human freedom. Critical evolution psychologists who take the free will view suggest that determinism removes freedom and dignity and devalues human behavior. By creating general laws of behavior, deterministic psychology underestimates the uniqueness of the human beings and their freedom to choose their own destiny. There are important implications for taking either side in this debate. Deterministic explanations for behavior reduce individual responsibility. A person arrested for a violent attack, for example, might plead that they were not responsible for their behavior. It was due to their upbringing, a bang on the head they received earlier in life, recent relationship stresses, or a psychiatric problem. In other words, their behavior was determined. The deterministic approach also has important implications for psychology as a science. Scientists are interested in discovering laws which can then be used to predict events. This is very easy to see in physics, chemistry, and biology. As a science, psychology attempts the something to develop laws, but this time to predict behavior. If we argue against determinism, we are in effect rejecting the scientific approach can be explaining behavior. Mental illness appear to undermine the concept of free will. For example, individuals with OCD, what happens? Lose control over their thoughts and actions, and people with depression lose control over their emotions. Clearly, a pure deterministic or free will approach does not seem appropriate when studying human behavior. Most psychologists use the concept of free will to express the idea that behavior is not a passive reaction or to forces, but that individual persons are activity respond to internal and external forces. The term soft determinism is often used to describe this position whereby people and do have a choice, but there is a behavior is always subject to some form of biological or even environmental pressure. Is Freewill or determinism correct? What is correct between these two? The history of philosophy has been dominated by completing arguments around the ideas of free will and determinism. Simply stated, the issue hangs on whether human beings should be thought of fundamentally free to chase or free to choose their actions and mold their lives, or whether they need be redeemed as being at heart their control, be they fate, biology, politics, or class. The debate has been long running and hugely vicious. It began in ancient Greece and was picked up by Romans, dominated Christian philosophy, and rumbles on to this day among philosophers, psychologists, and neuroscientists. Part of the reason why the question seems so hard to find a conclusive answer to is that it is almost always framed in kind of a terms as it was discovered whether either free will or determinism could be an advisable interpretation for human beings in general. But in truth, the debate becomes more interesting and more relevant if we change the parameters of the question and ask simply, is an idea of free will or determinism more or less relevant to me? All of us will have different needs in this area depending on our contrasting levels of two psychological qualities. Defeatism on the one hand, aspiration on the other. There are people whose levels of defeation have grown so high. They too readily declare that responsibility for things always lies outside of themselves. The course of their life is, they tell us, entirely determined by parents, school, the government, the boss, the middle A, or the media, anyone but themselves. Then what happened? The result is radical under achievements and self-deceit. But there is another kind of difficulty created in people whose levels of aspiration have grown so high on the biggest worldly exaggerated nothings or notions of free will. They will deem that everything about their lives is capable of change. They will declare that they can achieve all things simply through an exercise of the will. This career and income, their relationship and prospects are all apparently subject to dramatic change. It's an inspiring philosophy, but one that reliably also leads when things don't work out, as they never do in all areas, to bitterness and rage. Each of us needs it to decide for ourselves whether we should have a greater faith in determinism or in free will. We should ask how much to the suffering in our lives can be treated back to a defeat attitude, and how much might be traced back to reckless aspiration. Some of us need to develop a faith in the free will, others need more a mellow acceptance of determinism. The oldest debate in philosophy is not beyond answering. We just have to answer it more personally, with more of a self or a kind of sense of what we need to believe in to be calmer and more fulfilled. Perhaps the wisest way to navigate the debate between free will and determinism was worked out by the American Roman philosophers of the Stoic school. These Stoics proposed that we should see ourselves as hovering between a free and a determined state. And they invented a powerful image to evoke our conditions as creatures able at times to effect great change and yet never far from being subject to immensely powerful external necessities. We are, they said, like dogs, we have been tied up and predictable caught. Our leash is long enough to give us a degree of leeway, but it is not long enough ever just to allow us to wander wherever we please. A dog will naturally hope to go whenever it pleases, said the Stoics. But if it cannot, then it is better for an animal to be nothing behind the cart rather than dragged and strangled by it. To reflect that we too are never without a leash around our neck may help to reduce the violence of our protest against events which veer away from our intentions. It may be said like a receipt for passivity, but a Stoic instead, it is no less unreasonable to accept something as necessary when it is not as to rebel against something when we beat. It's our reason that most judge the differences that is where we have a big advantage, our advantage over a dog. A dog will probably not at first grasp that he is even tied to a cart, nor understand the emancipation or to connection between the swerves of the cart and the pain in the neck. So he wants to be able to predict whether the cart is going and abist his position accordingly. But reason enables us to theories with considerable accuracy about the path of the cart of the destiny, which offers us a chance among living beings to increase our sense of freedom by ensuing a good slack between desires and what we cannot change. Reasons allows us to calculate when our wishes are in irrevocable conflict with reality, ourselves willingly rather than angry or bitterly to necessities. We may be powerless to alter certain events, but we remain free to choose our attitude towards them, and it is an unprompting acceptance of what is truly behavior that we can find a distinctive sincerity or serenity and freedom. Free will and determinism. Free will is a moral and social concept that is central to philosophy and most religious. It has been arranged that the basis of freedom lies in the contingency of natural events. Though this line of reasoning has been by and large abandoned, for freedom to exist at all, the concept of strict universal causality will have to be surpassed or suspended, at least one in this moral sphere. Another line of thought sees the foundation of freedom is spirituality. The soul, as immaterial, is not subject to the deterministic laws of nature. Whether the explanation belief in free will amounts to the conviction that as individuals, human beings are endowed with the capacity of choice, of action for decision among alternatives, and especially that given an innate moral sense, humans can freely discern good and evil and choose the good, though may be often do it. Determinism is a philosophical view that given certain individual conditions, everything is that bound to happen as it does not and in no other possible way. Thus, nothing in nature is a contingent nor a theme in any reason for human freedom. The particulars of a hard determinism hold that make of one's chapter actions are in free will, but only appear to be so. Coarse quantity, moral responsibility is an illusion as well. Soft determinists or compatibility believe that while one's actions are indeed caused, since causality does not compel us, the determinist approach proposes that all behavior has a cause and is predictable. Freedom will is an illusion, and our behavior is governed by its internal and external. So, we can see the external features of these forces over which we have no efforts. Srikantai Kalyana Nidhi Nidhidram Sri Venkatramasa Srinivasaya Mangalam Mangalasana Premadaja Sarvesha Urvairacharya Sakrutaya Astu Mangalam.